Well, it's just turned August, and I haven't done my July update yet. Not that there's been a whole lot of progress. Um, Here's the turtle deck, upside down, as you can see. I've trial fitted it's a little bit more than a trial fitted the instruments. They're all actually connected. Well, they're in the right place, and the wires are run to them. Still got the labels on, what the wires run to and everything else. But yeah, that it represents a whole new problem. If I need to do any work on any of these instruments, because the instrument panel is sort of got a couple of bends in it, if I want to remove, say, this instrument, I can't get behind it because in the actual, when the turtle deck's in the aeroplane, there's structure here. So I can't gain access from underneath here. It's not a simple matter of just undoing these screws around the perimeter, wherever we are, here. It's not a simple matter of undoing those and pulling the whole instrument panel out, because it won't come out with the flight instruments installed. So obviously step one is to remove the flight instruments, then undo all those screws, then pull the instrument panel, well, not right out, but you can pull it out a few inches and work on whichever instrument you need to. These are all wired. All they need is one wire running to whichever sensor is already installed in the aeroplane itself. However, what I was thinking of doing is cutting an access panel in here in the back of the front seat so that I can get at the back of those instruments. And it'll be rather like this one. This is so that I can gain access to the oil tank. That little one over there, which actually has its hatch on. I'll show you this up when I turn this upside down in a second. But yeah, I can put something like one of those on the inside of the back of the seat, roughly about here, to gain access to the instruments. Bit of a bugger, but there's really no space. The combination of no space and structure, airframe structure that runs under here is what's giving me a hard time. Now let's have a look at the airframe. Most of the wiring now has been run to its final destination, including the antenna wire, which will connect up to the antenna, which has already been trial attached to the turtle deck. Oh, I've added a map case, a little bit more to the structure, which I never had before. Let's go around this other side. Oh, actually, we'll talk about this while we're going past. I honestly don't know where the centre of gravity on this aeroplane's going to be. Now, okay, the Rotec. Yeah, the Rotec is a little bit heavy. It's around 100 kilos as it sits there. The Rotax 912 is about 100 kilos with its radiators, with its exhaust system, with its accessories. Yeah, and that 100 kilos this is about 115, in fact, thinking back on it. The 100 kilos of the Rotax is probably more back about here somewhere, a little bit about where the reduction gearbox is on this engine. So it's not all bad. This engine's as close as I can get it to the firewall, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. So we've got about 15 kilos, 100 kilos for the fully fitted out Rotax, or 115 for this engine. So the difference about 15 kilos, okay? And that 15 kilos is more or less in this position. So my 912 powered Renegade in Peru has shortened front cockpit area. In other words, the firewall has been moved back about 6 inches back here. Same as this one. The battery, no, I'm not making it solar powered and electric Renegade. I'm only going to use one of these batteries. The Renegade in Peru, that battery is located right here, just aft of the pilot's seat. I've actually moved it back about 3 battery lengths further aft, which will help my CFG. I'm still 15 kilos, and I've counterbalanced it with 10 kilos that's about half a metre further back. So what I've done back here, just in case, is I've added this piece of plywood. It's not attached to the airframe yet, but it has built-in anchor nuts in the bottom, just furniture ones for, I don't know, like making flat packs from IKEA or something. But what I've drilled it to attach to the airframe. I've got no intentions of putting the battery back here, but what I can do is, with the horizontal stabiliser and the vertical stabiliser both covered with their proper fabric, I can still gain access through this area here. I can gain access through the horizontal stabiliser, through this portion, and I can attach extra weight here if necessary. I really don't think it is necessary, but I want the option just in case. I don't want to be trying to move those batteries. I'm going to locate the battery where it is now, at the furthest aft position. Let's get around here and have a look. This tie-down method, these are basically plastic bolts. This is a tie-down from a boat shop. You know, the thing probably cost me about $5, and it sort of really looks like it has too. The battery can't move fore and aft because I've located it with blocks, wooden blocks that are attached. So it's tied down. It's tied down firmly. It's not about to move. Okay, so maybe high negative G, it might think about moving, but otherwise, no, it's staying where it is. And of course, the other 2 batteries come out. The sub panel. Oh, I had to rework the sub panel, which, if you remember seeing one of the earlier videos that had a normal start switch, like your everyday commercial light aeroplane, like a Cessna or something like that. I couldn't make that type of switch work in this application. I need power supplied to the ignition systems for this engine. There's 2 ignition systems, like most aeroplane engines. But I couldn't make them work with that rotary switch. I had to put regular switches in. So a left magneto and a right magneto. That's the on position, that's off. I finished, it looks horrible, but I finished plumbing the fuel system. So if we trace this out, I've got a 4-way fuel valve. I've got feed from a left tank, which I haven't up here. I haven't bent this yet. I want to put the wings back on, and it'll bend out here somewhere, probably from about there, from the back. No, probably from the front, it'll go up here somewhere, about like, where's my finger? About there somewhere. So somewhere short of this, the top of the cabane, it'll bend out this way and connect to the fuel tank. So I've got a left one, I've got one coming from the right, and I've got this third one. Oh, where's that come from? Right here. My intention is to put an auxiliary or a ferry tank sitting on the front seat and attached to the front seat, and it'll connect to this position here. Obviously the front seat, have a look where it is, right underneath both cabane struts, pretty much on the centre of gravity. Yeah, the spars for the lower wing is here, aft of the seat. Where are we? There, aft of the seat. And for the upper wing, the main spar is here, which is forward of the seat. So the seat is pretty much on the CG. And of course the fourth line, this middle one, the fourth line runs off. Again, another horrible bending job, but there's not much you can do. Runs over here between the pedals in the front seat to the boost pump, does a 180, comes back and comes onto this side of the firewall, comes through there, up into wherever that little gold gasculator, which separates any water that might come in. It's also got a screen in it that'll keep, big lumps out of the carburettor. Okay, the carburettor is a whole other story. I'll do that in a few minutes. I've located the ignition modules and the coils, one on this side and one on the other side over there. They're not attached firmly yet. They're in location, but purely to guarantee that they've got a spot to live. They're not attached properly yet with the final attachment method, because I'm probably going to have to take them off to fit other things. I've run the wires for the alternator. I've got a plug for the alternator. I just haven't done that particular part of the wiring yet. I've been working on the instruments and the turtle deck. But most of the wiring has been run. Some of it's been connected. That boost pump actually works. There's only three. This is the amount of wiring in this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And all I've got are the two ignition systems, the radio, the boost pump, and this third switch I want to use as a light, and it's purely, the light is just purely for visibility. It's not for flying at night time or anything like that. And of course I've got my circuit breakers down the bottom here. They've all pretty much been wired up as well. The wiring's not real neat at the moment. You know, these ones are not even connected. They'll actually be connected up pretty soon. They're left magneto and right magneto, left-hand ignition. The radio. The radio, there's only about 400 wires run to the radio. You've got a press to torque from each, the top of each stick, which I've installed here, and on the top of the forward stick. So that's 4 wires that's going to run to the radio. You've got obviously power running to the radio. You've got an earth running to the radio. Let's go around the other side here. I'm still going to tip that over for you. And our connections for the plugs for the headset. I've run the wiring. This is the wiring running through these little saddles that I sort of made myself because the turtle deck fits over the top of them. I've put a couple of earth wires on there. All that's got to be soldered up. Okay, but it'll happen. Unfortunately, it's all got to happen at once, and there's there's a lot of terminations to make. Now, because the engine's so far located so close to the firewall, and you've already seen this bowl. That was my favourite bowl as well. I had to put that because basically the air filter for the engine, for the carburettor, actually sits back inside the fuselage. Sits back in. You can't really see very well, but inside there. Here's the bowl sticking. Where are we? Let's get. It sticks through here to give some space. Don't panic when you see that that structural that's cut off. The structural was an option, and it was an option for a ballistic parachute on this aeroplane. I actually elected to install it, and perhaps I would have been better off if I hadn't, but it was too hard to remove to put the bowl in, so I just cut it off. Right, so let's go. The carburettor, this piece of white cloth, wherever it is, right there, is covering the access to the carburettor, or to the engine, the access to the engine where the carburettor attaches. Right, here's the carburettor over here. Somebody's committing aviation out there. Okay. This is the filter, which will sit inside basically inside the aeroplane, inside the cabin area. It's a regular Bing carburettor off probably a BMW or something like that. It'll sit up that way, and the firewall's about here somewhere. So most of that carburettor sits inside the aeroplane. Most of that air filter. I've made, or had a friend made, these little attachments to attach the carburettor to the cables. Yeah, they are perfect. They're really, really, really lovely. So eventually they will be. These are the cables. Where are we? Right here. The cables at the moment are 10 feet long, which is just a little bit more than we need. But anyway, they'll be cut off. There's an outer sheath that you'll run from the carburettor here to the firewall, which I'll show you next. These two adjustments for the carburettor. One will be choke, and the other one will be. This is the choke one that has a pretend cable coming through it. It's all I did was put a couple of 6mm riv nuts in through the firewall, so that these things can connect through there. So the cable will actually, the two cables, the choke cable and the throttle cable, will both run through these fair leads. These, can we see that? These fair leads are connected along here to this. I use this piece to connect a lot of things to, a number of things. The cable for the choke is on that little lever at the back, and of course the throttle, and it's ganged to the forward throttle by a push rod. The the cables, those cables I just showed you on the carburettor, will come through these fair leads, through there, and connect to the throttle here. So they'll be connected here at the back to the throttle, and at the back there to the choke, wherever it is, right there. The front one is purely a slave. It doesn't actually connect to anything, but a front seat pilot could use the throttle if they so desired, but it's going to operate the throttle in the back. So if I ever break a throttle cable or need to adjust it or whatever, I don't have to try and climb into the front cockpit. Climbing into the front cockpit on this aeroplane, it's, well, in degrees of difficulty, it's probably close to being the same as pushing the toothpaste back into the tube. Oh, he's coming back. Okay. Righto. So that's, one more thing while we're on the subject of carburetors. This is the connector that connects. This connects the engine on one side to the carburettor on the other side. It's a pretty simple arrangement. This tube here sticking out the side, we'll make it come out the side, is it connects to a little copper tube, and the copper tube fits this tube here, this black tube fits it perfectly, and that black tube is what's going to give me manifold pressure indication. So that was one problem that I had to sort of try and overcome, and that's how I decided to do it. Now, as I started to say about the difficulty, because the engine's so close to the firewall, the difficulty of fitting things, I need to fit the carburettor sort of next. In order to fit the carburettor, I've got to do it from this side, for starters, and I've had to remove the starter motor, which you might have noticed is under there as well. So, but the starter motor won't come out with the oil filter, which is here, the oil filter in oil plumbing, that it normally attaches to the firewall. It's got to come out so that I can get the starter motor out, and the starter motor had to come out so that I could get the carburettor out. So obviously they've got to go back together in the reverse order. That's no big deal. We can do that. The more astute is the fuel pump. The more astute amongst you might have noticed this clear plastic or blue plastic tubing, which is running to the carburettor. Runs from the fuel. This is the fuel pump. Runs from the fuel pump to the carburettor, and also from the fuel pump to the gascolator, which is that water separator arrangement that I showed you earlier. Don't panic. I know on a two-stroke, this blue tube is quite acceptable, and it probably would be on this aeroplane as well, but I'm not going to use it. I will use something more substantial. At the moment, it's being used in order to reserve the space for when I run a proper tube. So don't panic about that one. Okay, that's pretty much the update. Like I kept promising, I'll put the camera down for a minute and I'll try and turn this turtle deck upside down, or up the right way in fact. Okay, here's the turtle deck up the right way. There's a fair bit of filling and sanding done already on the back of the turtle deck. Remember, underneath here is the ground plane for the RAID for the antenna, the radio antenna. You need a certain area of aluminium to attach an antenna to, or it won't transmit properly. And that thing's called a ground plane, and that's what's riveted on underneath there. Here's the instrument panel, and if I do say so myself, I think it actually looks pretty good. Got altimeter and airspeed indicator over here. The engine instruments are sort of grouped what I think is about as sensible as I can get. I've got the oil located over this side, so I have oil pressure and oil temperature, located on the left-hand side, and this will be the oil pressure low oil pressure warning light, where there is an oil pressure switch as well. These two, the cylinder head temp is probably one of the most important instruments, although could argue that oil temperature might be the most important engine monitoring instrument, and oil pressure. So these two are really important. Manifold pressure, why fit a manifold pressure? Manifold pressure and a combination of manifold pressure and RPM will give you an indication of power. I use it all the time. That's how I set my power setting in the RV, the RV6, that you can see through the airframe over there. And I haven't got a graph. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I'll work out what an acceptable number is for both of these to run the engine at a reasonable power setting. And of course, as you go higher in altitude, not that this is an altitude aeroplane, it's going to do most of its flying down near ground level. But anyway, if I do want to travel somewhere, I want to get some altitude. And as you go up in altitude, the manifold pressure will drop and the RPM will probably increase a little bit, but to keep the same power setting. I've got a VSI, not that I don't have a VSI in the other Renegade. Oh, it's missing. There it is out the front. I don't have a vertical speed indicator in that aeroplane, and I've got it pretty well sussed now where the horizon should be for the power setting that I use. So no big deal. But here there was spare space on the instrument panel. This warning light will be a charge warning light for low generator output, low alternator output. And it's just purely to match the oil pressure one on the other side, to make it look sort of symmetrical. Aeroplanes are really meant to be sort of fairly symmetrical, if you want to make them pleasing to the eye. Front cockpit, I've just purely got the airspeed and altitude. Now, because I'm a young fellow, and this is your normal sort of eye level. My eye level is about there. I actually can't focus very well on these instruments. It's difficult for me to do that, but I can focus quite well on those front two from this eye position. So it works for me. It works. So yeah, that's about it. These areas, like around where the cabanes go, this is where the fuel line will pass, and there's clearance around it. They're all done properly now. I've still got to cut this flange off, and that'll be done once the turtle deck goes on for its final time. Headset jacks will be mounted here, or to plug the headset in the back. I didn't really want to put them right here next to that instrument, so they're going to be in the rear cockpit. They're going to be in fiberglass, and that's it. That's pretty much the update. Still haven't been flying very much. I haven't flown the RV6 a couple of times. Oh, I went on. Previous. I've got to apologise for that previous video that I posted for the big cross country I did. 26 nautical miles. So it's really, you can actually see 26 nautical miles when you get to altitude. So I could see where my destination was when I was above this airfield. Recording audio in an open cockpit aeroplane, it's really up there. That is really, really difficult thing to do. I'll keep trying. I'll get it better and better and better. But that guy that made the radio call a few minutes ago should be taxiing past. Sounds like, yep, there he comes up the taxiway now. He lives over there in one of those hangars across the way. But so that's it. I'll let you see Simon go past in his RV6, and then I'll sign off. And yeah, have a good one. Thank you very much for watching. There we go. And he lives just there.